Hi everybody, my name is Adam Harvey. I'm a music composer and I've composed for all kinds of different things like film, TV, video games, my own personal projects, etc. And I'm making this video to go into detail about the process I use to create a piece of music for a film trailer. It's a fantasy film. And I've seen a lot of great videos on YouTube about how people compose and use sample libraries and mix and master and do all those things. But I wanted to make my own one and go into as much detail as possible about the process and really try and go through the whole thing. Obviously, there is more than one way to compose and orchestrate and mix a piece of music, but I just wanted to go through my process, and hopefully it maybe have helped some people that are entering this world or need a bit of advice or some ideas about how to go about creating their own stuff. So what I want to do first of all is show you the music in action, so to speak. What I'm going to do is play the trailer with just the music underneath. The music has been written to sync with the trailer, for the trailer. So I think it'd be good to start with showing you the trailer itself with the music underneath, no dialogue or audio effects or anything, so you can see how the sort of final piece came together, and then we'll go through stage by stage, how we recorded, or rather how I wrote the music, my compositional techniques, and then how I get that music into Cubase using sample libraries and put it all together, and then eventually how I mix and engineer and master the whole thing to create the finished product. So yeah, we'll start by watching the trailer and then we'll go into a bit of detail about the compositional process. Okay, so that was the trailer with just the music playing underneath. Incidentally, this is a film that I'm quite heavily involved in. I'm also producing this film. It hasn't been created yet. This was a promotional trailer that we shot in a couple of days to sort of get people interested in the film. It was shot by and directed by my good friend Richard Swingle, and I produced it, but I'm also obviously writing the music, if not for the feature, then at least for this trailer. So yeah, I mean, we knew straight away that we wanted that fairly epic trailer sound. You know, it had to really have a bit of an impact. So I got this edit pretty much complete. So we knew that the sort of points that we had to hit musically, and we had a fair idea of what we wanted to capture. So we had a, you know, what you would kind of term a mini spotting session where we watched the video and we had a chat about, you know, where the major beats had to lie in the music, you know, where things needed to be emphasized or where we needed the music to change to represent certain elements. And then I went away and I started to think about the music. Now, you know, obviously there's more than one way to compose, and you know, there's no right or wrong, but I tend to find one of the problems I have is I get sort of overexcited when I start composing a piece of music. If I go to the piano, I'll start playing and I'll come up with something I like, and I instantly think I want to hear that, you know, I want to hear it, how it's going to sound. So before I know it, I'm on Cubase and I'm already loading up instruments and recording stuff in, and it's sort of, you know, you can work that way, and I think some people can, you know, create great music that way, and I've worked that way as well sometimes, but I find that I get into a mess if I do that too often. Before I know it, I'm already mixing and EQing and, you know, adding all these instruments, and I just get lost. I'm sort of trying to compose, orchestrate, mix, you know, everything at once, and it's just not a good way to work. So I try and be more regimented and organized these days, and that starts before you even sit at the piano. I think, you know, one of the things that I try and do as a music composer these days is wait as long as possible before I have to get to the piano and try and compose as much as I can in my head, and think about, you know, the function of the music before I really start getting into the orchestration and, you know, the composition and thinking about those elements. Otherwise I just get compositional diarrhea and I'm just, you know, creating all kinds of nonsense and not getting anything done really. So what I usually do is try and spend a few hours or a couple of days or something away from any keyboard or instruments or anything, and just really think about the music. Me and Rich talked about the function of the music, and then I watched the trailer a few times, and then, you know, I go do something else. I go for a walk, or actually what I did with this, and I try and do for most things these days, especially when I'm composing, you know, to video, is come up with a diagram. Now, when I say diagram, I actually mean a really terrible sketch on a piece of A4 paper. You know, sometimes I use color and stuff, but I'm no artist, and you know, I can barely write legibly. So I came up with this. Here we go. I just drag it across here, and yeah, this was based on the conversation that me and Rich had, and then me thinking about what I wanted to do with the composition, and I just broke it down into sections. And, you know, that way then I could think about what the music had to do in each section and where the music had to change and what might happen. And this is one of the sort of little diagrams that I did. It's really simple, you know, there's nothing here that's, you know, advanced or intense or anything. In fact, it's all, you know, it's all just brainstorming really. So I sort of knew at the beginning, when you see the main character in his sort of normal home in this little farm, this medieval village, I wanted something sort of folky, slightly medieval sounding, quite plaintive. So, you know, I made a little note of that, and I knew, or I thought I knew, I wanted a viola. I actually changed it into a cello, but I knew that I wanted something, a string instrument, to be playing this, you know, main melody that would probably be playing over the top. So I just made a you know, note of all that, plaintive strings, folky, blah blah blah. And then we knew that the next sort of major beat had to be when the boy falls down, or around the time the boy falls down. And, you know, at that point the music changes because suddenly we're entering a new phase. This boy is ill, and, you know, the music has to represent that. So I, you know, made a jot here that, you know, we'd have strings playing, maybe mournful voices, which kind of ended up staying in there but changed a bit. and then we have this big landscape shot, which is kind of a sort of punctuation mark in the trailer. I put emphasize here, maybe brass, you know, and obviously probably the strings keep on, maybe some kind of plucked instrument. We ended up not emphasizing it as much as I originally thought, but you know, that's still kind of there. And then we have this little section where our main character is preparing to go on the quest, and it's the first time that we sort of see elements of this fantasy world that he's going into. So the music had to change at that point. It had to sort of become a more interesting canvas, move away from the more plaintive instruments and start going into maybe synths and ambient sounds, vocals, stuff like that. Made a note of that. And then the tension starts when this character says the son must survive his father, and slots his sword into the holder and prepares to go. And I knew here that there had to be some kind of beat, something that was starting to drive the music forward. I put strings, pretty much everything here, because you know, the strings go right the way through, but it's good to start thinking about what instruments are playing. At this point, we actually get into the fantasy world, and we start seeing mountains and all these kind of elements that suggest that you're on a journey. And I knew that the beat, you know, was going to sort of intensify. There was going to be some percussion, maybe some brass, strings as usual. I've also got here, this actually says staccato strings, because I knew that I wanted this increased tension, and that was going to come from some kind of constantly moving instrument or something. I pretty much knew that it was going to be staccato strings. And then I've just got rising tension here, because that's what's happening. We're getting further and further into the trailer. It's got to get more and more exciting. There's a point then at which we sort of first see this huge expansive landscape, and that's when the music really breaks, you know, really becomes much bigger. And we had to go for that trailer sound, and it was going to be percussion, it was going to be the whole orchestra. I've got tutti orchestra here because I knew it was going to be brass and woodwind, and also choir as well. And then I've got that continuing until this finish, you know, this is big sort of climactic finish. Well, actually, the trailer sort of ends more mysteriously. It's not a big action finish or anything, and we wanted to sort of end the trailer with that really big feeling that, you know, you're going to want to know what comes next. So the music ends like that, and then we've got the little title sequence at the end, and I knew pretty much that was going to be some kind of synth or ambient sound, and you know, that sort of nice mysterious ending that you usually get with trailers. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much you know, where I started in terms of bringing everything together. And then once I spent a couple of days really thinking about all this, I headed to the piano and started writing, and you know, that's when the fun really begins, I suppose. So I think that's a good place to leave today's episode. In the next episode, we're going to be talking a lot more about the composition itself, the musical structure, how it came together, looking at some of the earlier demos, and talking about how the whole thing evolved over time. So I shall leave this there, and I shall see you in the next episode.